Hector Pelayo, and this is your program, ALMA in the Community. Today we have our City Council member, Bryan MacDonald, who is running for a city mayor, and we want to welcome him to be here in our program and wish you the best of the luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you, and thank you very much for allowing me to be here this morning, and thank you to the community watching.
Well, we have a few questions for you. For example, if you want to be the king, want to be a king of Oxnard, and you didn't have to respond to the state, to the federals, what would you do to take the community to the next level?
Well, and I don't know that I would call it the king of Oxnard, because sometimes kings have a bad connotation of not listening to the people. And what I want to do for the city of Oxnard is take it to the next level, where we return to our grassroots, where we worry about making sure that this city provides everything it needs to provide to as many people as possible for the best level possible.
Yeah. What will you do for the elderly?
You know, the elderly are special in my mind, as are a lot of people in our community, but you look at people that have grown up their whole lives, and generally they've taken care of younger generations. And I think as the younger generations now, it's time for us to start making sure that we take care of the elderly, that their retirement years are golden, that they're comfortable, that they have recreation activity. I think the worst thing about anyone who reaches a certain stage in life is that they stop being active. And when they stop being active, they stop living. So we need to make sure that we provide all the possible resources, opportunities, and everything we can to make sure that this segment of our society stays active, stays involved. And we need to remember that they have a lot of experience that we may not have had yet, and they're a valuable part of our learning process. So we need to make sure they're involved.
Thank you. What will you do for the youths?
You know, that's another issue. We talk about involvement of the youth, and I think sometimes, and I know as a child, if I didn't have a lot to do, sometimes I got a little mischief and stuff. So I think we need to make sure we have the programs in place for our youth that allow them to learn the skills that are going to take them through life, that are going to allow them to interact, be the future leaders, and be the people to take over for, I'm not going to do this forever, so somebody needs to do this job, and hopefully the youth of today are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. So we need to make sure that we give them all the skill sets necessary to make them successful in life.
Well, thank you. And what would you tell our working adults?
You know, when I grew up, I remember, I guess you would call it a latchkey kid. My mom started working when I was 5 years old. And it was difficult in not having any resources or anything else, and having both parents having to work to survive. And I know that's an issue today. I would love to be able to see a system where we could make arrangements where some working adults could, attend to family issues more readily if they need to, be more flexible in their shifts or what have you, just to make it easier. I mean, it's a challenge to live in California. It's expensive, it's difficult, and it's very difficult to find families where both adults don't have to work. So I think we need to do as much as we can to strengthen the family unit and make sure the family unit survives with both adults working.
Oh, thank you. So what would you do to change what it is now, the neighborhood's challenges that we face?
I think some of the biggest challenges in the neighborhoods is that we don't communicate with each other. And I know I'm very special. The neighborhood I live in, everybody knows everybody. We all have keys to our neighbors' houses. We all watch out for each other. But I don't see that citywide anymore. And I would really like to see the neighborhoods come back to being microcosms of the community, where everyone in the neighborhood knows everybody. They look out for each other. They report things that don't seem right to the police. And we just really need to get back to that neighborhood feeling and get the neighborhoods involved in our community, because the community is the neighborhood. And I use this example a lot of times when I'm teaching in my law enforcement classes. But for the support of this community, we as law enforcement, or we as a city, would not be successful. It comes down to the grassroots. And if everybody chose to disobey the law at one time, there would be nothing we could do about it. So we really need that community, that neighborhood support to be part of this city, to really create the atmosphere of health, safety, and welfare that make this a beautiful city and attract people to live, work, and play here.
Well, thank you. We have a very difficult times for our business community. What would you do to change that?
I've heard about people want to attract jobs and bring stuff in. And California is just, unfortunately, a very business-unfriendly state. I think we overregulate ourselves here. And I think we encourage people to move out of the state to move elsewhere. I subscribe to a theory called economic gardening, which is looking at the businesses that are here now that are successful and reaching out to those businesses and saying, what can we do to make you more successful? Like gardening at home and raising plants to nurture your family. So we need to find the people that have figured out how to work in California and work in the city of Oxnard that are doing good things, and reach out to them and help them go to that next level to increase their staffing, to increase their output, to increase their production. And that in turn is going to draw more people here for jobs. It's going to draw more jobs here for other people. It's going to create more demand for supplies. And I think that we can very easily do that. They're doing that in Colorado. They've been doing it for about 10 years. And it's been a wonderfully successful program. So instead of trying to go out and draw people here, which is extremely difficult because it's so expensive, we instead find the success stories that are here now and make them more successful.
Thank you. What do you think about the nonprofit organizations?
I love your questions. They're just completely wide open. But, nonprofits serve a very useful segment of our society. And there are a lot of services that the nonprofits can do that the city can't do for whatever reason. And be it whether they're nonprofits that deal with homeless issues or veterans or the elderly or the youth or whatever, there's a huge need. And so, pardon me, I realized my phone was on. There's a huge need for nonprofits to fill that segment of our society, to provide services that we can as a city. And I think there's a need upon the part of the city that we need to help be supportive of those nonprofits through CDBG money. And you've probably heard, I know a lot of people have heard, I just heard last week, that for the last 6 years or so that we've been giving money back to HUD for homeless issues. And that's unfathomable to me that we would return federal funds instead of use them for the groups that are here. And I can't understand how we didn't know about it, why it never rose to our level. I'm embarrassed that we didn't know about it. I'm embarrassed that it never rose to our level. And I'm disappointed that our staff never brought it to us and said we need to deal with these issues. But now that it's out in the open, we know about it. This is something we have to do within 30 days. And we're working on that. But, we really have to be supportive of the nonprofits to serve our community. If we're providing all the services they need, a food bank, for example, is a nonprofit. And they provide food to the families that just can't afford it. It's a wonderful service. So those are all an integral part of our community that are just fantastic. We need to do everything we can to make sure they continue to thrive and exist and provide the services to the public.
Thank you. We have a very large community of, art communities. So what do you think about the art community?
I love the art community. I was born and raised in Santa Barbara, although I've lived here the last 50 some odd years, 40 years. And I remember walking the Sunday art show down on the beach in Santa Barbara. And I've always dreamed about having something like that here. Many, many years ago, I was able to work with the Mexican consulate when they were over on 4th Street at the Transportation Center. And I believe it was the first Fiestas Patrias celebration that we did. And we used the old brown building, which is now Ruby's Cafe, and set up a huge art display with art that was brought in from Mexico. And I think people get spoiled sometimes looking at what's here in the United States, but we really miss the other cultures out there in the form of art, music, dance, whatever, that we never get exposed to. So I think art is a wonderful thing. It broadens our horizons. It allows us to look at things that we may never have experienced. There are probably countries that I will never get to, but I can live vicariously in those countries through their artwork, through their culture, through their history, and displays. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and we need to take full advantage of it.
Oh, thank you. Last but not least, there's a very touchy subject here, the homeless. Mm-hmm. How would you handle the homeless situation?
Homeless issues are always challenging, and there are some people that are homeless because they choose to be homeless, and that's their decision. I guess I'm one of those people that says if you choose to live your life the way you do, that's your choice, as long as it doesn't negatively impact someone else by that choice. I'd probably be okay with it. But there are also a lot of people that are homeless because of the situation of the economy and everything else. We had a terrible recession for the last 5 years. A lot of people lost their jobs. When I look at things now, I look at how it's going to impact my community in terms of being able to afford where they live, how they eat, how they survive. And homelessness is, I believe, directly related to that. There need to be services for the people that have a need for those services, that want to avail themselves of those services. Job training skills. I was in law enforcement for 30 years. I often thought about this, that I was fortunate to have a career for 30 years, but if all of a sudden I was unable to do that job, what would I be skilled to do otherwise? And I'm not quite sure. So that kind of takes me to the realm of retraining programs, that there are people out there that want a new skill, that want a new life, a new career, whatever, that somewhere, somehow we need to have a program that makes that available to them. And I think we can do a little better job of that, because there are a lot of people out there, and I've talked to a lot of people. In fact, this morning we went and had breakfast around the corner here, and there was a young man sitting outside saying, "Can you give me a couple bucks for breakfast?" And my wife said, "Well, I don't give money, but we will buy you breakfast." And we went inside and talked with the waitress inside, and between the three of us, we helped buy this young man breakfast. I think that's something that we have to do as a community, to look out for our fellow person that's not as well off as we are at this point in time, and really encourage them to get back on their feet and move forward and do good things with themselves.
I have a question that's regardless to fracking. What it is your opinion about what's going on in the parts of the community, especially like Lemonwood or in that area where they're doing that kind of activity right now?
Parking you're talking about?
No, the fracking that is taking place, you know, they're extracting gas from the land.
Oh, fracking.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you said, I don't hear very well. I apologize. I don't know that, I mean, I've taken a lot of look at that, and you hear a lot of stories. For every story that says it's bad, you'll hear a story that says it's good. I don't know enough about it to really be good at it, other than I think that when you start shoving stuff into the ground that wasn't already there, that you're asking for some sort of catastrophe, disaster, whatever. I think a lot of times as a society we don't do things with the forethought that we need to have to really protect ourselves. And I'll use the example of when I first came here in the 70s, it was common to see oil trucks out at 5th and Harbor in the sand dunes, and they would open up the back valve and drive through there and dump old motor oil, and that was the way we disposed of it. And now we're finding that was terribly bad for the environment in this century, in this day and age. And so they say fracking's been around for 50 years. I don't know if it has been or not, but I don't know if it's as good a science as they say it is. And I certainly would hope that we're looking for any alternatives to do the best thing we can. And it's one thing to survive, get the resources you need, but it's another thing to do that at the cost and expense of the community health, and the environment.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to take a little break, and we'll come back in a few minutes.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. We're back again with Mr. MacDonald here. We're going to continue with this program, and we're going to ask him, what a specific program would you do for the elderly, so they can have a better future?
I think we need to get our elderly more in tune with the modern technology and stuff. And I'll use myself as an example. I don't consider myself elderly yet, but when I grew up, we had no computers, we had no cell phones, we had a party line in our house where you'd pick up the phone and make sure nobody was on it, and you dial a 5-digit phone number to call your friends anywhere in the city that you live. And things have changed so dramatically, so quickly, so technologically, that I think it's up to us to make sure that our older generation has the skill sets that they need to be successful in today's modern technological world. I got what they call a smartphone for a variety of reasons. I had to go borrow my neighbor's 12-year-old kid to show me how to work the darn thing. It can be very challenging. I consider myself to be pretty technologically savvy. And so I know for all the years my dad was alive, he refused to get a computer and refused to do email. And I kept saying, well, this is the way we communicate now. This is how we write back and forth and check on each other. Because my dad lived in another city. He goes, I'm not interested. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity out there for all of our generations, but we need to make sure that all of our generations are adequately prepared to deal with it. And I think the older generations now are the ones that are probably going to be best benefited by it, because now when you apply for something, you apply online. You apply through the computer. I checked on some information from Social Security. It's all online. You don't write them anymore. And when you call them, they tell you go to their website. So we're moving to that direction. So we need to make sure that all the services that our communities are interested in having are available to them, and that they understand how they can get to them.
Is there one program in particular that you would do for the youths that you can really help out for the undeveloped?
I think youth sports, youth activity, youth engagement is crucial to our youth. We for a long time have relied on the schools to give our youth the skill sets that they need to be successful, and they do very well on the educational side of it. But we also need programs on the interaction side, how to do team building, and we have some after-school art programs that are not funded by the schools, but are actually funded by the city of Oxnard to expose the youth to the arts. And there's a big push now for STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And that's great, but we also need athletics. We need art programs. We need music programs. We need all the programs that provide for the other skill sets that the schools may or may not be able to give to us right now to make a well-rounded person. And I think the city has a crucial involvement in that, in providing recreational opportunities for its youth, be it soccer, baseball, football, golf, what have you, that those outlets are available to our youth, and even at a more cost-effective way of getting them to you, because the young people don't earn the money that adults do, and because it sometimes becomes a burden for their families to be able to support stuff. I went to a friend of mine's soccer practice the other day up in Orchard Park in northern Oxnard, and the park was absolutely over capacity with soccer players. To me, that demonstrates that we need to have more recreational facilities for our youth. We're trying to put too many people into too small a place, and it's just not working out. And to me, that just absolutely cries out that we need more recreation here for our youth.
Well, thank you. How do you see the future of Oxnard as far as creating jobs ability?
We have gone through a very difficult period. We've gone through probably one of the worst recessions they've had since the Great Depression. We're now in the upswing. We have a new city manager. We need to really look at, one, our processes internally. One of the things that I hear from people all the time is that it is almost impossible to get a business started in Oxnard because our bureaucratic paperwork is so difficult to get through. I had a friend of mine who just did a karate dojo in the north end of Oxnard. She just opened up about 6 months ago. And she was so frustrated that she was to the point of saying, I'm not going to open in Oxnard. I'm going to go somewhere else and start all over again. And I started working with her. We got some other friends to help assist that. But our system should not be that difficult. It should be that anybody can walk in and find out what they need to do and get it done. And it's not working that way right now. And I think we have the resources on board to do it. We have just lost that customer service type of attitude. And if you go into a place like Domino's or any other customer-oriented business, their whole focus is, how do I make you feel welcomed? How do I make you successful? How do I make you succeed? And that's what I'd like to see in this city, that when you walk in to get a business license, you say, or we say, how can we make you succeed? And I'm not sure that we're quite doing that. I think we've gotten so worried about liability and lawsuits and everything else that we're afraid to stick our neck out. And I think at some time you have to just to be brave and do that. There's an old expression that talks about the turtles. Behold the turtle, he makes no progress till he sticks his neck out. And I think until we stick our neck out a little bit, try and be successful, we're not going to make the progress we need to make.
Thank you very much. So how would you change that?
I would sit down with staff and say, here is the persona that we need to create. Pretend that you absolutely depend on these people, because realistically we do. We depend on this city for our survival. We depend on the people that live here, that work here, that play here for our survival. And if we don't cater to that, then we're not going to survive. It's that simple. And that's the mentality that we need to infer, create in our staff, saying, but for these folks supporting us, we would not be here. We would not have jobs. We would not exist. And so I don't know why we've gotten away from that, but I think we have. And this kind of goes back to the police department. I spent 30 years in the police department. We talked about community-oriented policing. And for years and years and years, we would tell people, well, here's what you need to be safe. Here's what you need to be successful in your community. It's kind of like the Dragnet days with Sergeant Joe Friday, just the facts man. And we got to talking to people in the neighborhoods and found out that we were wrong. We didn't know what people wanted. And we would go out and do all these presentations, and people would say, well, what about my neighbor's yard that's not trimmed? Or the weeds or whatever. The important things to people are the things that make their quality of life good here. And we weren't listening to that as a department. And we changed our whole method of listening a long time ago to say, reach out to the community and say, tell us what you want. Tell us what you need to be successful. And I think that's what we need to do citywide. And right now I'm afraid that we're not doing as well as we could. I think we could do a lot better job of getting our message out and asking the folks, we're your city. We're here to serve you. What do you want us to do? What do you want from us to be successful? And so that would be the first part. The second part is that I think we're inefficient right now as a city. We take a long time to do very few things, and I think we need to give some authority back to our city manager, Mr. Nyhoff, the gentleman we just hired 3 months ago, and give him the commensurate authority to run the city, to do the job that he was hired to do. And I think that will have a huge impact. Right now, almost every decision has to be made by council for things to move forward. And if we can't get to a decision because we're meeting for 7 or 8 hours and it's just gotten too late, then when we don't make those decisions, staff can't do their work. They're not able to do their job. So we need to get back to a system of efficiency, go back to the business of being a community, give Mr. Nyhoff the commensurate authority he needs to run this community, make things more efficient so that when you walk into City Hall, and you're there one time and you're done. You don't have to come back on multiple trips. That when you walk in, you get the answer you need to be successful. I had a person call me one day and said, I'm trying to open a business in a particular part of the city. And I said, what type of business? And okay, and they went to planning, and planning said, well, you can't do that there in the area you want to do it in. And so I asked the question of the planner, well, what part of the city could they go in? And the planner said, well, any of 4 different areas. So I went back to the gentleman and said, you can't do it in the area you want to do it in, but you can do it in any of these other areas. And he says, well, that's perfect. I have a backup offer on a building in the second area you mentioned. And I'm thinking to myself, if the planner had just taken a few extra minutes and said, no, you can't do it here, but you can do it here, here, or here, then I wouldn't have gotten involved in that. The planner wouldn't have had to drop everything they were doing to answer my questions. The gentleman would have been happy the first time he went in and said, okay, I'm good, I can go here. And we just don't ask that question. So we're known as the city that says no. I'd like to be known as the city that says, yes, how can we help you? And just simple things like that can have a very dramatic effect on making this community successful.
Yeah, and the same line that you just mentioned, years ago, I had a property up in Northern California, and I wanted to make a swimming pool. So I went and I submitted my plans in the morning, and that same afternoon, I got my permit. The next day, I was digging.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, going from here, I thought, well, it's going to take me months before I can do this. No, with a month time, that thing was done,
I think there's a lot of ways that we can streamline our process to make it better. Part of the problem is that over the last few years, we have been very lean in the staff area. We need to bring people back to work and start making this functional. But we can do it. I know we can do it. I have absolute faith when we do it. We have excellent staff. We just need to make sure that they're accountable, which I believe they will be, and that we approach it from the aspect of not this is all wrong, but how can we help you be successful? How can we help you do it? And I hear that from people all the time. And the thing that we don't remember is that a lot of the people that come in to get permits are not construction people. They're not builders. They're not architects. They're not designers. They're Joe average citizen like you and I that don't know anything about that. And when we go in, we're kind of flying blind, so to speak, in that we don't understand all that. So instead of being frustrated and being told no, we need to be saying, okay, here's how we can make this work for you. And I think we can do that.
Well, thank you very much. Coming from the police department, what would you do to create a little bit more of crime prevention programs?
I think the big thing is that the neighborhoods need to understand that as good as we believe the police are, as good as I believe they are not perfect. And we are like anyone else in terms of being a law enforcement officer. We unfortunately make mistakes, or we don't do things the right way, and we need to learn from that. But when a police officer goes into a neighborhood, they may not know who belongs there, who doesn't belong there. In my neighborhood where I live, I know all my neighbors. I talk to them all the time. We regularly communicate. I know when something's going on that shouldn't be going on. But a police officer driving through in a patrol car probably won't recognize that unless they live in that neighborhood. So they may see things differently than we do as the community. So it's incumbent upon us as a community to be involved with the police department, to talk to them and say, this is what's right or this is what's wrong. We need to be the eyes and ears for the police department. I was reading on the Next Door site that is run through the city, and people were writing on there, I just go out and challenge people in cars if I don't recognize my neighborhood. That's the wrong thing to do. That's how people get hurt sometimes. Right. But they need to communicate to the police department of this is not right. And then the police department needs to be responsive. We need to be able to get there within a reasonable amount of time to make it worthwhile. And so there are two sides to that.
Well, thank you for your time. We ran out of time, but the door is open for you to come back anytime you would like to come back. And
well, thank you very much. And I certainly appreciate the offer and the opportunity to be here. It's a wonderful event. I'm looking forward to this, so thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.